American labor has changed and impacted the world over the past 400 centuries. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, labor is defined as practical work, especially work that involves physical effort. The first recorded labor organization in the United States was in 1648 when shoemakers and barrel makers were working in Boston. Eventually, with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, textile mills were built and staffed by children under the age of 12. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the Industrial Revolution is a major change in an economy marked by the general introduction of power-driven machinery. The Industrial Revolution introduced the key components to labor with the use of factories. The first textile mills were known for having harsh working conditions in which the working children faced daily. The first factory started with child labor until that was considered too harsh and was soon ruled out following with men taking over the workforce. Once World War II began and men were pulled away from factories, women had to step up and take over the male-dominated workforce. The working conditions did not improve and could have been considered a dangerous job during this time period. Most importantly, the American Federation of Labor put a stop to the harsh working conditions when it was introduced in 1866. This monumental organization led to the uprising solution and sparked the beginning of an enhanced American labor force.
Children ranging in ages from 6 to 12 years old worked strident hours with little or no pay. These vulnerable children were forced to work for at least 12 to 24 hours with no breaks. In the early 20th century, factory work was considered a man's job, but once the war started, adjustments were made. Women's involvement in factories during World War II was crucial for war production, the United States government's Department of Labor, which created the Women in Industry Service. Women engaged in a range of jobs such as operating a drill press, to production design, or truck driving. The American Federation of Labor was introduced in 1866 that consisted of labor unions in the United States. The AFL's president is Samuel Gompers, who served till 1925. This movement in the United States was simply for the protection of the workers. However, the meaning behind the AFL was to organize skilled workers into national unions consisting of all others in the same trade. Most importantly, the American Federation of Labor is directed towards having higher wages, improved working conditions, and shorter hours.
The American Labor Post illustrations created by the International Photo Engravers Union was established with inspiration from the start of American labor from the 1600s to present day. However, the approximate date of creation cannot be determined. The illustrations portray different visual and textual aspects of labor in America. The images on each of the cartoons characterize several symbols that have impacted the movement of American labor. This is historically significant because the images show two sizes for each drawing to be used for postcard or letter size. Therefore, the images were printed on paper to be used for other documents. The pictures indicate specific components that were influenced by this war, which revolve around labor organizations, Taft-Hartley laws, and the Jim Crow laws.
According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a labor organization is an organization, agency, committee, group, or plan in which employees take part that deals with employers about such matters as wages and grievances. Webster Franklin D. Roosevelt was the 32nd President of the United States, and during his presidency, union membership and the size of the American economy grew hand in hand. Labor union contracts are multi-year bilateral agreements between the labor union and the employer. A labor union contract summarizes the terms and conditions of employment for union members, as well as the employer's obligations and responsibilities. The Fair Employment Practices Committee, established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1941, was created to prevent discrimination against African Americans in defense and government jobs. The FEPC also enforced the Executive Order 8802, which banned employers, unions, and government agencies involved in defensive work against discriminating against workers based on race, religion, and national origin. Injunction is a judicial order that restrains a person from beginning or continuing a threatening action or invading the legal right of another. Throughout some cartoons, you see the KKK and police brutality. Through the wide variety of labor jobs Each require the use of different tools ranging from needles and thread to paintbrushes, scissors, and compasses.
The Taft-Hartley Law was governed by the Labor Management Relations Act of 1947, which emphasized the promotion of collective bargaining by encouraging the formation and growth of labor unions. This policy is designed to protect employers and individual workers as well as unions. The purpose of this development has an impact on labor relations as well as prohibiting jurisdictional strikes, wildcat strikes, political strikes, and boycotts. This United States federal law restricted the activities and power of labor unions and corrected unions' unfair labor practices, while employers, employees, and unions received new guarantees of free speech. It became a law despite United States President Harry Truman's veto on June 23, 1947. This act amended the National Labor Relations Act, informally known as the Wagner Act, that was passed in 1935. Many saw this as a means of demobilizing the labor movement by imposing limits on labor ability to strike for their leadership. This cartoon page shows tons of flyers that say, "Defeat the Taft-Hartley Slave Labor Bill." One of the letters starts off by saying, "Look here, Mr. Senator." Several men ripping the Taft-Hartley slave law and spitting on it shows the reactions of how they felt about this. "Defeat the Taft-Hartley Slave Labor Bill" is shown in big bold letters with tons of different men waiting to defeat it. A small image states, "Let the Congress know the Taft-Hartley will not pass." The Taft-Hartley law had an impact on the American labor, and it diminished the power of all labor unions and any other movement that comes along with it.
During the Reconstruction period in 1865, the Jim Crow laws provided civil right protection to the African Americans who were former slaves and those who had once been free. The laws also established separate but equal educational, economic, and social policies in southern United States. The Jim Crow laws touched all parts of life, especially in South Carolina. Black and white textile workers could not work in the same room, look out the same window, or even enter the same door. Many manufacturers would not hire blacks, and unions would pass rules to exclude them. Through all the hardships and prejudice during the Jim Crow era, several black entertainers and literary figures gained popularity with white audiences. After World War II, African Americans believed they had earned the right to be treated as citizens because of their military service and sacrifices. The Jim Crow laws and the high rate of lynching that is displayed in this cartoon were major factors which led to the Great Migration during the early 20th century.
Changes in American labor has been influenced by specific laws which has impacted the world for the better. Two of the most important laws includes the Taft-Hartley Law, which is about the growth of labor unions and equality, and the Jim Crow laws, which provided civil right protection to African Americans. All of these illustrations from the 1940s and 1950s demonstrate the women's roles, the labor tools that were being used, labor at work, which includes factories and the workers involved, and the Fair Employment Practice Committee. During the 1940s and 1950s, American labor was a crucial factor that portrayed a certain view across the entire world.